Hey everybody, it's Gav here from GCRE, the new home of Global CRA TV. Today we have our first episode of the Mobile Home Park Show. We're going to be doing this with Glenn Esterson, the premier and the only one to do business with when it comes to mobile home park. Glenn is a front person. He's a pioneer in the industry. He's the guy to go to when you're thinking about mobile home parks. And we're proud to have him as the lead on the Mobile Home Park Show with us here at GCRE. Glenn, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever it is. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing great, man. It's another beautiful day here on this planet. Just, trying to make sense of it all, but very excited
Yeah.
about our new show here.
Yeah, so as you know, it's going to be called, our show is called the Mobile Home Park Show with Glenn. I hope I spelled your name correct. I know some people have one N, some people have two
Yep.
N's. And the show is really for you to take people through the whole mobile home park experience and stuff like that. This is going to be episode one of many to come. So, Glenn, I'm going to let you take the floor on that. Start with the basics, go up to the advanced, however you want to play today. The floor is yours.
Sure, sure. Well, first, thanks for having me on here, and I'm excited to help, teach your audience a little bit about this strange niche that I'm in. It's manufactured housing communities, and we sell them nationwide across the United States, even sometimes into Canada. And manufactured housing is the cheapest alternatives to traditional. And it used to be called years and years ago, trailer, and nobody calls them trailer parks anymore. And you'll hear all the different types of names from land lease communities to manufactured home communities to mobile home parks, mobile home communities, and et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, it's kind of the same thing. Basically, you buy a manufactured home and at a fraction of the cost of what a built home would be, and becomes the residents' new home. They're affordable. They're pretty easy to make, pretty quick to get up, and they have all the the bells and whistles of modern apartments nowadays. Some of them you can't even tell if they're manufactured. They need to be like, wow, this place is great. I could live in one of these, or I'd let my grandma live in one of these. And there's some excellent retailers out there and manufacturers out there producing some amazing product nowadays. It's a lot different than what your dad was used to, back in the 70s and 80s. And it's come a long way. And around that has come an industry of investment. And that's kind of where I come in. And there's about 50 or 60,000 mobile home parks around the country, around the United States. There's about 7, 8, 9 million people living in them, and that's not a huge portion of our economy like apartments are, but it's a very unique portion of our economy. It's the lowest end of affordable housing for most, and often these tenants buy a very affordable home and they rent a piece of land in somebody's community, and they pay what's called a lot rent. And that lot rent, it can be as $100 in some cities, and in most cities somewhere between $300 and $500, around the United States for the lot rent, and very considerably more affordable than a lot of the two-bedroom apartments that I don't care where you go, you're looking at probably $1,000, $1,200 minimum, and when you get into any of the primary cities, you can probably double that. So it's a really great option for people when you don't have quite the resources, or you're trying to save some money, or you just want a clean, affordable place to live. So what I do is help investors find a good deal, and help park owners evaluate what their parks are worth, and show investors kind of how they can reach 20% returns, and what that structure looks like, and help them with the financing, and help them understand the different levels of revenues and expenses that come in, because in our industry not all revenue is capitalized, and neither is all expenses. So you get to look at a typical P&L and say, here's the NOI, and here's what I'll pay you for it. It doesn't quite work that way. So there's a lot of strange math that goes into understanding value here. But at the end of the day, you tend to get some pretty nice returns, especially when done correctly. And that's what we help advise people on some strategies on how to do that. Whether it's they're an owner who's owned a park for 50 years and is looking to retire and is afraid of the tax consequence and how to structure that, and whether it's a new buyer buying his first deal or, an institution buying their 450th deal. And that's, we play on all fields in between. So that's kind of what we do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's pretty good. So, Glenn, like, what's the first thing that somebody would want to consider if they were looking at mobile home parks as an investment? Like, what would be your top 5 things that they need to consider, and then let's go through one of those, each of those individually, so people get a good picture on it if that works for you.
Sure. So, the first thing you got to consider before investing in this business is do you have enough money? You can't just have $10,000 and go buy a park. It's just not going to happen. The financing in this world is so hard to finance a mobile home park. So oftentimes you're going to come out of pocket 30, 40, 50% for your down payment, and in order to get that, especially that first deal. So you have to be kind of cognizant of that. When I bought my first park, it was 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. And financing was a little bit, different back then. And we were able to do, kind of a stated income approach with the lenders. Nowadays, they don't do that. So it's a lot harder to figure this stuff out. And nowadays, they certainly wouldn't have financed the park that I bought back then. So the first thing you need to do is, have some money. Okay, not just enough money to invest, but enough money to invest and live on. I always recommend for a first timer, have 6 to 12 months of living expenses squirreled away before you even think about investing. And I would suggest that should be the case before you invest in anything. It's important that you have some runway there with that, because this business is not the easiest. The second thing, assuming you have a couple bucks in your pockets and you kind of have an understanding of what acquisition size you're looking for, then you kind of have to think about, do I stay close to home, or do I want to go further from home to get what could be a better yield? And on a first deal for a first timer, I often tell them that it's too scary to go too far. Like, even if you live in the middle of the nowhere, where I used to live, 30 miles to the nearest grocery store, and not a lot of investment opportunities out there. It's still a safer bet at first to get something closer to home. I kind of speak of it as if you're going, that you're trying to be a doctor, and you don't just skip college and go to med school. You first go to college and then you go to med school, and that's kind of like the same thing. You want to take a couple baby steps here, something that is more of a learning curve process. You're not dumping all your money into it. You're not taking this massive risk. You're taking a very strategic risk. You're not spending all your money, and you're learning the curve, because boys and girls, there's a big curve in this one. It's not simple math. It's not your normal tenant base and all sorts of things. And usually on your first park, most people, they tend to buy a rougher park, and it requires a lot of proper management and operations and strategy, so you don't end up sideways. So first, the money. Make sure you got some money. Second is the location. I really recommend staying close to home on your first deal. And then third is going to be the within the second one is the municipality. Not just that it's a location near you, but is that municipality going to be friendly to you personally investing in their community? Or are they going to kind of do you dirty when you go there because you're an outsider? And for me, I was an outsider, even though it was literally the county over from where I invested. It was totally different everything. I was a small guy, and they saw me coming in, and they absolutely loved to put new restrictions on things for me to comply with that were very costly and at times very prohibitive. And they do that to everybody that comes into the business. So what we have kind of taught our clients and have learned over the years is just go straight to the municipality as part of your first step in identifying a location, and go speak with them. Are they a friendly town to do business in? Talk to the locals. Figure out, some of these things, because those guys can jam you up hard. So within the location is also the municipality. Then you got to figure out the management side. And that's a whole different point, a whole different problem, because, are you going to manage it? I managed my first park, but I took it as if it was my job. And I was there literally more than 40 hours a week, climbing under trailers, fixing things. That was bananas. I don't recommend it, but I had no other options. Or at least I didn't think I did back then. So if you have a job, you're going to want to buy a more turnkey type of thing. And you're going to want to have a manager, which means you got to go do some interviews and find somebody that's capable, because a lot of these managers out there, and Joe Bob in number 2 trailer, and he's going to be the on-site guy to help you show the units and collect the rents. It's possible, and quite frankly, it's realistic to think that sooner or later Joe Bob's going to take advantage of his position and take your money. It happened to me. I had a guy that took an entire month's rent from me by claiming he was my manager and knocking on the doors of the tenants. And the tenants are as suspect as people are. You knock on your door and you say the landlord's helper. Oftentimes people are just comply. And that guy blew town, and I lost a whole month's rent. I couldn't double charge these guys. And so you got to watch out for that. So I really recommend getting a licensed third-party manager. Often your local real estate agent offices have good referral systems to property managers, certified property managers. And that, they're going to charge you a few shekels, but it's okay. Typically you're going to pay between 5 and 10% to manage a park. But that's going to free you up to not be on the trailers, not be dealing with, a bunch of knuckleheads and showing the property 5 times a day and things like that. So I would highly recommend that. So, those are really the big 3 right there. Are you in a financial position to invest? Do you have the location and the municipality figured out? And then do you have the management? Those kind of things figured out. Then you start looking at actual deals and talking to actual banks and things like that. Of course, prepping a bank a little earlier on to see if you're even creditable to get credit from them is a good idea. Your credit score is important. Your income sources are important. They're going to verify all this. And on a first-time deal, it's probably going to be a recourse loan, and it's going to be, a hard process to get through. 60 to 90 days minimum, I would say, especially right now for a first-timer buying a first deal. Once you get once you get a few more deals under your belt, the financing becomes a lot easier, and you'll start seeing some non-recourse loans and looking at deals that are maybe a bit frothier with upside, and you'll be a bit more capable to get that. But if you don't set up your game correctly right out the gate, you're going to go through a learning curve you don't like, and then you're not going to want to continue investing. And this business, it has a learning curve, and it almost put me out of business. It almost put me upside down when I first started, and I was struggling to keep up. And nowadays, there's enough resources to help you kind of slow that. But at the same time, first deals are hard. I don't care what industry you get into, they're hard.
That's some pretty good insights there, Glenn. So, you've obviously given the top 3 things that you think everybody should be considering when going into the deal. You've also given some ideas or some examples of stuff that you've made mistakes along the way as people are going forward. So with the situation with COVID right now happening and stuff, is your views that people should be investing still in mobile home parks, or what do you see? What would be your advice for somebody who is totally new coming into it?
Sure. So yeah. I mean, it's still a good time. It's in fact a great time to get still invested in this business. Okay, and it's not just Glenn the broker telling you it's a good time to be in the business. It's Glenn the guy who cares about your financial future. It's a good time to get into the business. The challenge, the challenge with COVID right now is it's monumental what's happening out there. I mean, it's bananas, and it may not get under control anytime soon. And we're seeing sort of the levees break on some of these other stuff with some of the apartment housing portions. We're seeing problems there with tenants not being able to afford. We're seeing delinquencies rise across most sectors of real estate right now. However, with MH, we're not really seeing that. So we're seeing it be very much consistent with the majority of parks are within 95% or so, plus or minus, caveats, of course, with collections from 12 months ago. And not only that, we're seeing people push rents. People stopped pushing rents, when March came. Everybody put all their rent pushes on hold. It seemed to be pretty nice that everybody said, okay, we're going to take a breath here. But now as we're entering, the fourth quarter, rent prices are back on the table. I mean, they're not hard, they're not heavy, they're often fair, smaller rent prices, but we're not even discussing that in other industries and other verticals of real estate. And our occupancy has not been hit in our industry here of manufactured communities, nor has rent collections. So we're seeing this to be a very safe, kind of sheltered world in the investment world, which, 5-10 years ago, nobody really cared about our industry. Only a few really smart guys were in this business, and they were consolidating and building some gigantic wealth and kept it kind of a secret. And a couple of years ago, the secret started leaking out, and everybody's here now. And now that we're in these trying times, we're seeing just how impressive the performance of this industry is. And that's, literally skyrocketing the amount of transaction volumes that we're seeing. I'm closing 7 deals this month, which even for me, that's a lot of deals, and that's kind of what the pipeline looks like now, for at least for my team. And, just yesterday, we heard of a deal that was a $550 million deal that got closed, okay, in the MH world. And, as well as another, $96 million deal that closed about a week earlier. And the big guys are taking big shots right now. And when you see big guys taking big shots, you have to think to yourself, they know something I don't know. And that is that we're the most resilient industry. And if we go into even more uncertain economic times, and we start seeing inflation, and we start seeing, people losing their housing, it's going to filter into our industry. And if we do go into inflation, we're going to be one of the safest reserves out there, because cash flow and real estate in affordable housing is going to continue to be a great inflationary hedge. And so what we see as the play right now, especially for the new guy coming in that can't compete with these, $100 million purchases, and I get it. For us, for a guy like me trying to buy his first deal, $500,000 is a big number to come out of pocket. And, those kind of deals are still being overlooked by the majority of kind of the larger players in the game. And, if you got, $2 million to put into this game from an acquisition standpoint, there's a lot of opportunity out there to consolidate the industry. And the aggregator in this industry right now is the guy who's taking some risk, but he's doing something that is going to pay off, I think, handsomely if he aggregates a portfolio properly. Because the consolidation is, there's only 50, 60,000 parks across the country, and only about 25,000 of them will ever be, investment worthy. So there's not a lot of those around the country to be able to consolidate. So gathering up these kind of smaller parks, putting them into a package, making them pretty, stabilizing them, getting them ready for the next, big bucket owner, the guy, if you put 20 parks together, even if they're small parks, we're going to be able to help you sell it at a premium to the next guy in the food chain, and you're going to get paid handsomely on it. Now that's a risk, and with all investments, it's a risk. You could go bottom up, and we've seen people go, totally out of the business and didn't like the experience and lost a lot of money. But right now, at least what I'm calling the smart guys that I'm talking to, that's a lot of the business plan. And, it's I think a solid business plan when you go through the logic lines of it.
So Glenn, you said there's limited parks in the United States that's available. What is the likelihood of somebody wanting to create their own mobile home park from scratch? Is that something that they could do, or we should leave that for another topic at another episode?
We can totally address it now in 1 minute, and then we can totally spend a whole episode on it. But the 1 minute version is good luck. You're probably not going to get to do it. However, there's a few projects a year that come online, and when I say a few, I mean less than you can count on your hands. And often they tend to be in more tertiary markets. And we see some development in Texas. We're seeing some development in Idaho. We're seeing some development in Alabama. We're seeing more expansions happen throughout the country, and that seems to be where we're getting some traction. But from a straight up, development with no infrastructure in place, and just a vacant piece of land, and then a year or two later, it's a mobile home park. It's not going to happen too easily. And if it's your first deal, it's very unlikely it's going to happen. And it's going to be pretty cost prohibitive, because they're really almost everybody that's had to build a park, or that has built a park recently, had to do it as a subdivision, kind of like how they build stick built subdivisions, residential family homes, which is just very cost prohibitive, because you don't need that much space for these homes, but they're
yeah.
they kind of work out that way. So we think in the next 10 years or so, we're going to start getting more developments as government becomes a bit more understanding about the need for affordable housing, and that's kind of how we view it right now. So the zoning, which leads into a good topic of the zoning, just the zoning right now is actually something that's a good value, and buying parks that have the zoning on it, because that's not something that's easily given anymore, is in itself its own valuable asset to own.
Okay, Glenn. Well, thank you for that. As we wrap up the episode, our first episode of the Mobile Home Park Show with Glenn, any last points you want to give to people, or any last thoughts you want to leave with them before we close off the show?
Sure. This business is hard, guys. Don't let the internet people tell you it's not hard. Okay. I mean, it's the gurus that are out there, and a lot of them are very smart, and we refer to them affectionately as a guru. They're smart guys, but a lot of them fluff it up about how easy this business is. And you buy a program or a conference or a book or whatever, and then there's an upsell about how you can do it more and things like that. And it's worth going through a lot of those training programs, but don't believe the hype. It is hard. It's a hard business. You have to understand who you're dealing with from your tenant base. Okay, they're not your typical tenants until you get up to a higher class of mobile home parks. And typically it's a really hard learning curve. We're here to help you, and you don't have to use us as a broker. I promise. I'll never upsell you into trying to use me as your broker. It's not something I would ever do, but we're here to help you. So if you need some guidance, by all means, give us a call. We're happy to help. For $20, you can buy my book. It's not an encyclopedia, but it's a pretty good starter kind of on how to get into this business and how to, see if this business is for you. And then there's some excellent courses out there that get considerably more expensive. But, most people, when you read about our industry online, they make it sound easy. And I can tell you from 20 years of being in this business, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Okay. And I used to be a farmer, and this is 10 times harder than any farming I ever did. So,
right.
Keep that in mind.
Okay, Glenn. Well, we appreciate your time today on the show as always. And we look forward to episode 2 of the Mobile Home Park Show with Glenn. Can you give our viewers an idea of what the second episode is going to be about, if you can?
Yeah, sure. I think we should, in the second episode, kind of go through some understanding of the vernacular in this business. What lot rent is, what park-owned home rent is, why it's capitalized or not capitalized, understanding the cap rate, which is the big word you guys are all going to hear, and understanding how to arrive at an appropriate expense ratio. I think that would be a good 20-minute summary to run people through.
All right, cool. Well, Glenn, it was nice to have you as always on the show, and I look forward to having you for the next episode.
Absolutely. I can't wait, Gavin. Thanks.
Have a good one. Bye.